Hey guys, I'm Greg.
And I'm Ashleigh.
And this is the Living and Learning Podcast. On this podcast, we speak with fascinating guests to uncover how they've experienced life change by crossing cultures,
Crossing borders,
and expanding their worldview.
So, let's dive in.
Hey, what is going on, Ashleigh? How are you?
I'm doing well, Greg. I'm so excited to be with you.
Absolutely. On today's episode, you sit down with one of our good friends, Meg van Rijn, and talk about this idea of cross-cultural engagement. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about Meg and who she is and what her role is here at Living and Learning?
Yes, I would love to tell you what she does. She actually works on our Ecuador campus as the director of operations. So she runs a lot of the programming that happens throughout the semester. And a little fun fact about Meg is she grew up on a dairy farm, so she could probably teach you how to milk a cow.
Wow, that is fun. I don't think I knew that about Meg. Dairy farm, very cool. As you guys jumped into this conversation of cross-cultural engagement, I think one of the things that really stood out to me was the back end of an experience. I know we go and we think about all the moments we're going to have in it, but really on the back end, when you come home and you settle back into things after having a moment or a time of cross-cultural engagement, you really have a new sense of compassion for people who are different than you. And I think Meg really unpacks that idea of compassion and grace and patience for people who maybe have a different worldview than you. So I love how you guys got into that idea.
Yes, and you're going to be hearing a lot about life change, and I feel like for myself, that's been a huge part of my story. Cross-cultural engagement has given me a new perspective and has changed my life. So as we were debriefing the podcast a bit, Greg, you mentioned one story in there that you really enjoyed. I'd love to hear a little snippet about that to get people kind of interested in it.
Yeah. I think Meg told the story about this student, Miranda, who was a nursing major from Biola. And a lot of times we think about the social side of cross-cultural engagement, but really Miranda had a vocational kind of exchange on this idea where in her internship at a hospital, she got to sit down with Ecuadorians and bring a lot of those things that she was experiencing of patience and grace and compassion with people who are different than you, and bring that into the workplace for herself. And so Meg unpacks more of that kind of at the end of the episode and end of the conversation. But that particular story stood out to me. So without any further ado, let's jump right into this conversation.
We're grateful to have you, Meg. It's been so great.
Thank you. So sweet.
So as I reflect on it, I feel like God has a heart for the nations. Mm-hmm. And like cross-cultural engagement, it is part of like actually living out to one of the greatest commandments is loving people. Mm-hmm. And how does that cross-cultural engagement actually help us love people better? Mm-hmm. What would be your kind of take on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think when you talk about the idea of God having a heart for the nations, my mind goes to the idea of like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And I think in order for us to have a heart for the nations, we have to know his people. And so you kind of mentioned that, but I think the idea of cross-cultural engagement for me is how do we get curious about other people and how do we understand people who are different than us, who live differently than we do, look differently than we do, have grown up differently than we do, and
live different lives.
Yeah. And how do we get to know them, to know their heart, to know the heart of the Lord deeper too, because we know that he loves all his people. And so I think that is kind of what comes to mind when I'm thinking about the idea of what does the Lord's heart for the nations look like and how do we do that? And so, yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
How do you feel like it changes someone's perspective on life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when it comes to the idea of how do cross-cultural experiences cultivate students' minds or even our own minds, I think there's a couple things that come to mind. I think first, the idea of curiosity that I talked about. I think when you are faced and put in situations where you are interacting with people who are different than you, I think you naturally just get curious. You kind of ask the question of, why do you think that way? Or, you know, how'd you get to that conclusion, or whatever the question may be. I think that naturally happens when you are in situations when you're experiencing things cross-culturally. And so I think the gift of curiosity is one that I think is undervalued in a lot of spaces, but is one that really comes out in cross-cultural engagement because you get to learn people's perspectives while also really engaging with them. So I even think of our homestays and think about the idea of you have these Ecuadorian families who take in students, and these students come in as strangers. They don't know them. Sometimes they can't even totally communicate with them 100% perfectly. And these families have grown up in Ecuador, lived in Ecuador, do life in Ecuador, and these students come in kind of learning that. So they cook with them, live with them, engage with them, and these students walk away being called son or daughter. Yeah. And to me, it's like, whoa, how cool that two people can live totally different lives and come to grow in really deep relationship. And that I think is work of the Lord that he does in people, but I think is cultivated by the experiences of cross-cultural engagement, because you get to know people, you get to love people who are different than you. And that's a really powerful space to be in.
That's a picture of the gospel, right?
Yeah. Like that is the Lord's love for us. That and it's nothing that these students do. It's nothing, they don't have the best information to share or understand Ecuadorian culture perfectly or speak Spanish perfectly, but they're completely loved for exactly who they are. And like you said, that is the gospel as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like even in my own personal life, I've been greatly impacted by growing up as a missionary kid in Argentina. And I feel like it's given me a wealth of just love for people because I've been able to see people in all different types of capacities and how they live, you know, through poverty and through wealth and through just different ideas and perspectives in life, as you were commenting on. So, we are lucky to have been able to experience that, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think it would add this idea of it invites you to like love other people while having different opinions. I think when you're in cross-cultural experiences, you come to realize there's a lot of people who think differently than you do, which is a gift. And like you said, we're lucky to experience that and lucky to know that. Yeah. But there's this idea of you and I can come from different backgrounds, come from different cultures, and we can talk on different topics or view the world in different ways, but still have deep connection. And I think often you think this idea of like cancel culture or what it may be of, oh, you think differently than I do. Yeah. I'm done with you, or I don't connect. And I think there's just a really, really powerful lesson there in cross-cultural experiences of learning to respect people, engage people with people, and really learn what it looks like to sit in relationship with differing opinions and do that well. And so I think that's a really unique experience that comes out of cross-cultural engagement.
Yeah. I think even like the difference that I've seen in my own life is and I think we talk about this a lot in our Ecuador program, that, you know, in Ecuador and Argentina, where I lived as a child, people are more people-oriented, but here in the States, you're more task-oriented. Yeah. So it's interesting to see like how I adapt to being a task-oriented person here in the States, because that's what I'm surrounded by. But even in Argentina and Ecuador, it's like, man, people are the most important thing. Yeah. So who cares if I have a meeting like in an hour? You're going to sit and drink mate or cafe with that person.
You run from the street. Yeah. Like you already know you're going to sit there for 20 minutes, talk on the side of the road because, hey friend, nice to see you.
So I'm so glad that I've seen both sides of the coin. You know, it's like, okay, I know I can learn how to be better at tasks, and I know I could be better at sitting and being with people.
For sure. And you highlight like such a good point. Like I think often there can be this ranking of cultures of like what is better, what is whatever. And it's like, actually, North American culture has great things to offer and great things to show in the same way that, gosh, Ecuadorian culture's value on people is so admirable. And we often have this idea of like culture's not good or bad, it's just different. And so it's sweet to kind of put yourself in different cultures and learn from different cultures and see all different things there are to value.
Yeah. I want to hear about what you thought of when you first moved to Ecuador.
Yes.
And to greet people, you're kissing them on the cheek. Yes. What was that like for you?
Well, day one, let me give you some context, had never been to Ecuador, had never studied abroad, did not speak Spanish. So talk about culture shock. Like I was in it and a staff member, like I'm in it as a staff member, like, okay, like students, we are doing this, we're doing this. And so I remember like day 1 or 2 and all of a sudden you walk into a room and everyone's giving you besitos. That's like the word for little kisses. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? Left or right? Like, where do I go? Like, is this normal?
Am I kissing them directly on the cheek?
Yes. Like, am I kissing the air, their cheek? I'm not sure. And it was just this moment of like a lot of uncomfortability. And now it's so funny to reflect 3 years later and think about, gosh, that was one of my favorite pieces of culture. It's like wanting to enter the room. Yeah. Like that's such sweet connection, such sweet moments of intimacy with people, and feels really sweet to do that. But I just can have like such deep empathy for students when they come their first week. It's like, I remember
what that was like.
Yeah. And I think the uncomfortability is really good, actually. Like I think we can live, and I say this as a really general statement, and obviously every single person's different, but we can really live in our own worlds and not experience the uncomfortability of bumping up against different culture. And so I think it's really powerful to have to kind of struggle through that to get to where it becomes really sweet. And then you have a really cool opportunity of like, whoa, now I know a lot of different cultures, or I've experienced a lot of different people, and man, what is kind of, who am I? Like, what is me, and what parts do I want to adapt? And so I even think of who I was day 1 is different than who I am 3 years later. And there's parts of Ecuadorian culture that feel more connected to who I am. And there's still a lot of ways in which North American or Dutch culture really influences who I am as well.
Yeah, that's cool, Meg.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the students in our program to be able to experience that just maybe through Ecuador, or maybe on our study tours where they go all over the world, or our semester in Baltimore, or even Italy. Yeah. So there's a ton of different options where you can cross-culturally engage. One of the things that I was curious to hear from you is, in your time with Living and Learning, what have you seen, like maybe a good example of what a cross-cultural engagement has been like in a student's life?
Yeah. Gosh, we could sit here probably and swap stories back and forth for the rest of the day. And really, I think every student kind of allows this cross-cultural experience to impact them differently. And so I've seen it impact students' choice of career. I've seen it impact where they choose to live, what communities they choose to create, like who they have sitting around their dinner table. I think is little ways that I've seen it. I even think of a student I got to connect with last week, and we were sitting at lunch and just talking about what she's up to, what she's doing. She is studying nursing, and it was so fun at Biola. Whoop. I'm an AP grad, so I feel a little bit sad saying that, but it's okay. But just
we love all schools.
Yes, go school. But she was just telling me kind of about her recent clinicals and things like that. And she was telling me about a couple patients she had that were Spanish-speaking patients. And she just got to really understand their life because she remembers what it was like not speaking the language in Ecuador and feeling really confused and feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And then for her, having been in Ecuador, she has some Spanish context now. And so she just watched how cross-cultural experiences got to create unity even in her work. And it was really fun to just get to see her face light up and her passion really kick in when she's talking about this experience of, I'm studying nursing, I'm in clinicals, and see the ways in which the Lord is using my cross-cultural experience to help me connect with other people and connect with people who are different than me. And so I think often difference in culture can be a separator, I guess would be the word I would say. But it's been really cool for her, for me, and for all of us to see how her cross-cultural experiences draw her to go toward unity in those situations.
It's an expanded her skill set, her mindset.
For sure.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's better at the work that she does because of her cross-cultural experience, which is really cool.
I love that. Wow. Thanks, Meg. Really appreciate you giving us kind of a rundown on what it looks like to cross-culturally engage. And I'm excited for you to do it soon. So we'll see you later.